Upon its arrival to the public over half a decade ago, Interstellar was instantly praised as one of the best movies ever made. Its visuals, sound design, score and atmosphere are all seeming like the perfect ingredients for commercial and artistic success. And it was. Upon its release it seemed difficult to find any flaws within the film, except for in one area: the writing. As with most of his productions, Nolan wrote it with his brother, a reason as to why this one also has a tendency to mindfuck you on the first time through. And in a similar vein to his other blockbusters, one can go on any review website to find a sea of comments critiquing the film's characters for being hollow, uninteresting, the plot formulaic despite the convoluted subject matter, and above all, Nolan's use of love is contrived. And at first glance, it definitely seems that way. One wouldn't expect Nolan to use what seems like a glorified deus ex machina to resolve all the questions proposed by the plot. In a film dedicated to an absurd level of scientific accuracy, going as far to hire a theoretical physicist to provide guidance during its creation, why does Nolan shoehorn this romantic, archaic concept into Interstellar? Various commentators have seen the introduction of this abstraction as a last-ditch effort to justify the temporal shenanigans that occur throughout the film. In short, love just doesn't fit within the scientific premise that Nolan has set out. Why is Cooper chosen? Love. How do the future humans know to link him to Murph's bedroom? Love. Why was Brand right in arguing for Edmund's planet? Hi, it's posted at me. I forgot to say the answer is love, surprisingly. It all does seem a bit arbitrary, and I wouldn't fault anyone for seeing it this way. Nolan might have just run out of time, the plot might have got too complex for his own good, and so he just had to grasp at straws in order to fix it in 2 hours and a half. But for me, it feels like there's an element of intention to it, that Nolan's use of love isn't contrived, but serves as a response to this very idea. The idea that love and other concepts have no place in the modern day, that they're just remnants of uneducated, confused, romantic civilization of a day gone by. It seems to me that, at heart, Interstellar is a response to the reduction of life to its atomic building blocks, and is a testament to the power that the human element can bring. Before I build upon this point, it's important to establish what I believe Nolan is responding to. This idea of reductionism traces back to the Enlightenment, a 17th century cultural revolution that spread like wildfire throughout Europe and eventually influenced the world at large. Otherwise known as the Age of Reason, it heralded an era of staggering development in areas of art, philosophy, politics, and what would come to be known as science. Thinkers of the Enlightenment encouraged global use of reason and methodology, such as a scientific method, questioning and examining anything and everything. Eventually this would lead to a recession of Christianity, superstitions and other abstract values over the following 2 centuries. The Enlightenment's systematic destruction of all things irrational began to fade towards the close of the 18th century. But the doctrine of solving all through methodology and reason has continued to influence humanity to the modern day, with many scientists claiming to be able to, or that they will be able to, reduce the phenomena of the world to a series of predictable processes with near certainty. One of the clearest and most famous examples of this being the case of Francis Crick, who upon deciphering the structure of DNA, went to a local pub and proclaimed that he had found the secret of life. The following 70 years of biological research into the topic make his claim doubtful. This abandonment of established values and concepts was no better summarised in Nietzsche, here we go, with his statement, "God is dead." It's pretty underground philosophy, I know. Here he didn't mean that God had taken a nasty fall and passed away, but that the Enlightenment's growing favour of atheism had eroded the values that religion brought, leaving society in a state of freefall in which there are no defined moral laws or order, no doctrine by which one could live their lives. Whilst Nietzsche concedes one could provide other systems to live by through natural science or philosophy, it seemed that everything could now be called into question, and any newfound code may bring out the worst in humanity. This loss of stability seems to be growing every day, with each scientific discovery made chipping away at what little beliefs we have left. No longer do we have the comforts of religion, spirituality, or the romantic ideals of the soul. It seems now that all one can find comfort in is the unfeeling, cold embrace of scientific endeavour. And for good reason, it's difficult to escape from. George Ellis praised fundamentalism for its unbelievable success in providing rational explanations for the majority of, if not all of the scientific knowledge that we hold today. But this largely pessimistic view encapsulates exactly what Nolan attempts to push back against in Interstellar, Despite all the science going on that provides a seeming solution to our problems, there are these values that maybe we shouldn't examine. Fortunately for Nolan, he isn't alone in this rebellion against reductionism. The Enlightenment's rationality was met with the rise of countercultural movements such as Romanticism, which fought back against the concept of abstract reason and placed a greater focus on the individual, their experiences, and the subjective world. As the scientific method has gained increasing favour over the centuries, a smaller but just as justified group of holists have raised equally convincing counter-arguments against it. In response to reductionists on free will who argue that everything can be determined, Dennis Noble went on to highlight the hubris of reductionism.
The recipe is not the dish.
And
The
score isn't
recipe
the music, yeah.
and the score is not the music.
And to assume that we could reduce the complexity of the world to processes about which we understand relatively little is overconfidence at best. To expand upon the seeming hubris of a reductionist is George Ellis, who semi-jokingly defines a fundamentalist.
There's someone who takes a partial truth and claims it's the total truth, and that's exactly the problem here.
It's an incredibly human thing to find one piece of evidence and declare a comprehensive understanding of the topic, as seen with Crick's earlier statement. And this is why I find it important that we do not abandon these abstract ideals so freely. They've lived with us for much of our history, and it would be rash to give all that up in a moment of unearned confidence. This tension between science and abstract concepts serves as the central theme of Interstellar. In a film where characters desperately pursue science and reason to solve their predicament, the inherently human, unscientific concept of love is what provides them with an escape. It's the connection between Murph and Cooper, the love between father and daughter, that saves humanity. Fittingly, what saved our race was the most human thing of all, the transcendent quality of love. In a scene of particular importance, we see Cooper and Brand argue over whether they should go to Edmund's planet or Mann's. After a vote, they decide upon Mann's planet, favouring what was scientifically accurate. If not for Cooper's later decision to sacrifice himself to the singularity, Brand's love-influenced decision to go to Edmund's planet would have been the correct one. Her monologue perfectly encapsulates Nolan's point, arguing that there must be something special about love.
But maybe we've spent too long trying to figure all this out with theory.
Time and again in this film, we see that it is love that guides humanity to safety, not objective science. Naturally, it's not as black and white as this. Very few strong messages tend to be. Cooper's response is equally convincing.
Love has meaning, yes. Social utility, social bonding, child rearing.
He raises the equally valid point that we are products of our biology. Maybe, if traced all the way to our origin, we can entirely determine what one individual would do, who they would love, and what their passions were, purely based on the structure of their biological code.
This is, at heart, the reductionist viewpoint.
And even with the influence that love holds, it is ultimately the scientific data of the singularity that saves humanity, allowing them to create various space habitats so that humans can survive. And before that, it's their technological advancement that allows them to identify and access the wormhole in the first place. As it would be unwise to disregard the romantic, it is naturally unwise to treat science as pessimistic ramblings that one should ignore to be happy. Through this, Nolan proposes a synthesis between the two concepts. A world which favours neither cold reductionism nor romantic ideals, but one where both can be utilised. He asks why we must, in the pursuit of science, disregard all that we as a species have held dear for hundreds of millennia that have preceded us. Interstellar shows us that there is a value to be found in the romantic, the humanist ideal that we have agency in a universe that seems pitted against us at every turn. It poses the underlying question that if we abandon what makes us human and reduce ourselves to automatons with cogs of cells and gears of atoms, then why should we have art? Why express ourselves in the way we do? Why love? By defending the humanity of our lives, Nolan not only makes a case against reductionism, but he defends film, art, and the subjective experience as a whole. And in case you still don't believe me, Nolan found a poem that summarises this perfectly. And I'm sure anyone who's seen the movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's a poem that tells us not to succumb to the dreary reductionism of science, but to celebrate our humanity until the very end, to hold faith in the values that have allowed us to survive as a species for so long, to stand firm in the belief that we are more than machines governed by chemicals, and that our love and desires hold meaning. It tells us,
do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end, no dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Quite a dramatic ending there, very Nolan-esque, I guess you could say. Kind of trying to go for that atmosphere. I hope you liked it. If you did, feel free to like, comment or subscribe. First video down, so a lot of work